Okay.
All right, Karen, you're all good.
Thank you. So welcome to the presentation today, Career Agility, Pivoting in a Time of Disruption. My name is Karen Larson and I work for DPI, Discovery Partners Institute, which is a division of the University of Illinois system. DPI is one of two partner organizations working on TechReady Illinois, which is hosting the webinar today. Before we begin, let me get into before we get into the main point of the webinar today, let me tell you a little bit about TechReady. So what is TechReady? To back up a little bit, DPI had originally planned to launch their workforce development initiative later in 2021. Then COVID-19 came along and blew everything up. With so many people unemployed in the state and across the country, we knew that we needed to pull that launch to this initiative to now. We partnered with another local group called P33 and brought TechReady to light very quickly. So TechReady includes training in high demand technology fields. Most of the programs we offer include certificates. Some of the programs also include a student experience, which involves study groups, coaching, and projects that give students the opportunity for hands-on experience. And the program has been designed with leading employer-driven input. We've grouped our programs into 4 different learning tracks that includes data analytics, cloud computing, software development, and cybersecurity. We have 10 providers delivering across those tracks, delivering more than 20 programs now that include content for all skill levels from introductory to advanced and run from a full weekend to 32 weeks of learning and from free to a few $1,000s for a full certificate. To learn more about us, please go to www.techreadyillinois.com. So let's get on to the subject at hand today. Can you adapt to the accelerated pace of change to stay relevant to your work? Our guest, Marti Konstant, researches how people respond and adapt to change in the workplace. As a top career influencer, she's uncovered the one trait that helps you and your organization flourish, not flounder, in today's fast-changing environment. She is a workplace futurist, something that I would like to be, a keynote speaker, and best-selling author. Her core belief is adapt or get left behind. As a runner and mountain hiker across several continents, movement and mobility are central themes, yet there is one cherished moment that stopped her in her tracks. She met and hugged a toddler panda in China. I'm honored to introduce Marti Konstant. Marti?
Thanks so much for that lovely introduction, Karen. And we're going to be starting with some interaction with all of you right off the bat. We're going to run 2 polls. And so let's run the first poll, and if you can just type in, you just get 1 answer per poll. So let's run the first poll. Are you standing up, sitting down, wearing pajamas? One of the 3, and we'll give you the instant results. It looks like we have an amazing number of people that are sitting down. 100% of you said that you are sitting down today. Good to know. And then we have 1 more poll. It's really more of the state of what's going on in your work and in your career right now. So let's run that next one. It's your job status. If you lost your job, are you furloughed? It's happened to a lot of people during COVID, thinking about looking for a new role, actively looking for a new role, or you're happy where you're at. So this one gets a lot of different activity. With the exception of we don't have any furloughs. So we can.
I was surprised that nobody was still in their pajamas.
Yeah, me too. It's usually just something fun to get us all going. So we can end this poll and share it with everyone just so you know what's going on. We have the most amount of people right now are actively looking for a new role. So that's good to know. Some of you have lost a job, and then some of you are sitting at your desk right now thinking about a new role, and a few of you are happy where you're at. So you are the highly engaged ones with your employees or with your environment. So on that note, we will close the polls and ask the question before I start sharing any slides today, is I'd like to know if you can answer in the comment section. Both Karen and I will be monitoring the comment sections. You can ask questions there, you can talk with each other, but if you can share with me right now, why did you choose to attend an event like this that was on agility, career agility? If you can just put some of your answers in the group chat, that'd be awesome. A better position, better focus, learning how to future-proof yourself. That's a great one. As a workplace futurist, I endorse that one. And now it's just lighting up. Trying to pivot, doing more spinning, learning some tips on how to be resilient. How about that? I mean, really what we're going through right now, if we're not, getting that muscle going, we're missing out on something. A new career, not just a new job, a new career. Patty says, as a meeting planner, I need to understand how to transition my project and program management skills to obtain a new job as a program manager. So there's probably a lot of stuff going on with Project Management Institute there. Looking to change industries. And some advice. One of you is looking for advice to make a career change. And one of you said, I just retrained myself for a career and as a digital business manager. That seems very useful as well. And Patty Cohen, I think I know you, so meeting planner. Jeff, yes, we never know when a company is going to do a RIF or a reduction in force. There's a lot of that going on right now. We heard about one of the major airlines going to be letting go a lot of people in August. So this is really good feedback, and we're going to cover some of these topics right now. I am going to start sharing my screen now. Thank you so much for participation. Please feel free to engage with each other. And anytime you have a question, this is where you load up your questions that Karen and I will monitor. Karen will be an extra set of eyes for me. Okay, got the chat function open. All right, so we're gonna go to the next slide here. Many people ask me how I got so curious about agility, and it happened very early for me. When I was about 13 years old, I was totally immobilized. I wore a brace that went from my neck all the way down to my hips. So I couldn't do things like sports. I was going right into high school. I couldn't do things like sports, no playing of instruments. There were things that I couldn't do because I was immobilized. And I wasn't just immobilized for 1 day or 1 month. I was immobilized for 1,277 days, 3.5 years. So I had to figure out during that time period what I was going to do if my mobility, my physical mobility was repressed in any way. What was I going to do with my mental agility and with the mobile agility I had at all? Yeah, I'm having that. Okay, so this is what the brace looked like. It was a lot of hardware for a young girl going into high school, and it wasn't pretty. And that is what my curvature looked like. It's 42, 40, 47 degrees. So it's a little bit of pain as well. And so that brace that I wore for that many years, as I was stretched every month a little bit, the idea was to straighten that. I was stuck. And have you ever been stuck? I'm sure by a few of the questions or answers that were put into the comment section, some of you might feel this way. It's a common situation. So this is really the first career move that we're going to be talking about today. Adapt or get left behind. What I had to do, I had to decide for myself, was I going to let this get the best of me, or was I going to work and study really hard and make some friends and overcome some of the shyness that I might have felt by wearing that brace? So here's the 4 moves we're going to talk about today, with maybe a bonus move if we have a minute or 2 extra. Adapt or get left behind, which we talked about. Viewing your career as a series of projects. Activate the feedback squad. It's about mentoring and about getting advice and encouragement from others. And A/B testing your career. Very much like marketers A/B test headlines. And a bonus move. This is another place that I got my inspiration for agility. I've worked in technology companies for a number of years, and what I figured out is the software developers had something really special that we in marketing didn't really have back then, and that was agile teams. They got together frequently during the week. They ironed out particular problems. They had status updates, and they were able to collaborate across functions. And I thought, you know, this could apply to the management of one's own career. The way that agile software developers develop software, where they develop things incrementally and they test and they measure and then refine. We could do the same thing with a career, and that's where the idea happened. I launched a research project at that time. This was almost 8 years ago. And I interviewed 120 people. I commissioned primary research at the time, and I learned from my research that we fall on a spectrum between stagnation and growth, between being steadfast and set in our ways and being agile, between being rigid and flexible. And if you look to the right half of that grid, that's where most people see themselves and where they want to be. And this graph is more important now than it's ever been, because flexibility is key right now, because everything is changing so fast. Lots more to the research, but let's get on with the definition of career agility. When I started studying this 8 years ago, there was no definition, so I created one. An agile career is a self-reflective, incremental career path guided by response to change, evolving job roles, and designed to optimize creativity, growth, and happiness. And I'm happy to say, when you type in career agility in your browser today, you're going to get in your first result that definition. Goes right to a LinkedIn post. LinkedIn is very powerful. Who knew that Google was indexing LinkedIn articles? So here's very quickly the career agility model that came out of the research. At the far left, you'll have the start place, and you explore. You could do this during college. You could do this mid-career, like many of us are right now. And there's a design thinking phase where, like, what do I want? What do I like? There's that squiggly line. Research questions. What are my strengths? What are my likes and dislikes? At some point in time, during college or during training or during mid-career, we have another career hypothesis. I think I'd like to try something else. You know, Patty Cohen is trying to figure out where she fits after having been this meeting planner. Where does it fit? There's an adjustment of what her career looks like right now. And then you get to that orange star in the center, and that's really the start. And think of this as a figure 8 on its side, and it is a perpetual movement. Similar to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's grieving process that has many different steps, this does as well. And you don't have to do them in any order, and you don't even have to do all of them. We have things like view your career as a series of projects, the project mindset, A/B test your career, create an idea zone, create a place for those special ideas for your industry, for your projects, and for yourself as a human being, and keep it at the ready so that you can measure your career against your values and the things that you like to do. Activate the feedback squad, optimize your career brand. it is so important to develop your personal brand. And the other one is research and do your career in a set of parallel pursuits. Parallel pursuits can take the shape of an extra coursework that you're doing, but it could also be a hobby. One of our guests today is interested in studying how the universe works. So one of his hobbies is doing things that are different from his day-to-day career. So this, and then you get back to the center again where the orange star is at. And then the dotted line with the respond to change. Right now we've got social unrest, we've got COVID, we've got constricting of some of our industries. Everything's changing. These are the types of changes that cause us to respond to that change. Couple concepts as we jump in to a couple of the principles that I talked about. We'll elaborate on them a little bit more. I call what we're going through right now the now normal. It's not necessarily looking backward and it's not necessarily looking future right now. We have to figure out what's going on right now. If we get too entrenched in what happened in the past and too entrenched in worrying about the future, we're not going to be able to make some of these plans. So this is a great time to be testing and measuring. The graph on the left is learning by doing. This is a great time to jump in and test some of your skills like we're doing today. Like we're becoming expert virtual presenters. And I created a little shaded area there called high density learning. We're in a high density learning part of the curve right now because things are changing every day. And on the right-hand side, we have a circle, experiment, measure, learn. This is a great time to be testing your affection for a different career or moving further forward and advancing in your current career or just changing everything altogether. And you're giving yourself permission to learn from this and measure it. So this is a time, and this is based off of Eric Ries's Build, Measure, Learn. It was the a project that he initiated several years ago, probably 15 years ago, where he was talking about launching products. This is how products were launched. Products used to be launched in one big product launch, and now we're doing them in iterations, and we're building and we're measuring and we're getting feedback, and then we're doing updates to the software instead of doing one big software launch. So the second principle is the career as a series of projects. In a minute, we're going to start talking to one of our guests about this very specific thing. Right now, in a traditional state of work, you start and you grow and you're highly engaged. And at some point, you have a maturity and a mastery, but you risk declining in this job life cycle. It's very risky for the organizations that hire you when you get past that and you're on the decline. But this is the promise of what it could be. Imagine if you could take multiple projects within the same company or within different roles, and as soon as you get to that point of waning interest, you can hop on to the next project. It doesn't really have to be called a project. It could be evolving your role. Or today we're talking about it being a project economy, and the organizations that work with their employees by assigning them projects will find a higher level of engagement because of the interests people have when they're first starting out. So I'm going to introduce you in a moment to Barbara Maldonado, and I interviewed her for this. She's a career switcher and doing a lot of things on the side, and I've learned so much from watching her career. She had a couple things when I was interviewing her. She said, my father told me I will be expected to work harder and be smarter, and she will let you know why that was expected of her. And then she also said about herself, I'm building my network to be in service of others. It's not just for Barbara advancing. So this was a little bit about Barbara. And again, she'll tell you why she had to work harder and be smarter. Her career path. She started out in retail sales in high school. She started, at the age of 14 even. She then got to social marketing and digital marketing. As everything was becoming digital. She formed a competency in customer success, and she's now studying for a degree in organizational leadership. So you can see she's gone from one area to another, but there's a thread that ties it all together. Her education was in political science, and I find that with a lot of people I talk to, what they studied isn't necessarily what they're doing. She did get a master's in digital marketing, and there's a lot of boot camps today and other things too. Even the TechReady Illinois, there's things that you can upskill yourself, but there's lots of other places to do this. So I'd like to explore with Barbara. Here's what happened when I was laid off in 2008. I can only imagine what some of you people in the audience here might be in the same situation. So Barbara's been through that. So I'd like to talk with Barbara just a little bit and ask her about, tell us, Barbara, tell us some of your story. And Barbara, if you can make yourself visible, tell us some of your story, how you developed your work ethic, and how old were you when you started your first job, and why did you feel like you had to work harder and smarter?
Happy to provide some experiences, and I do have my video on, so hopefully you can see me.
Yes.
Great. So there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to start with some expectations, we'll call it, that my father passed along to me at a very young age. My family and I moved from Puerto Rico to the mainland, as Puerto Rico is part of the United States, but in many ways it feels like two different worlds. In the early 1980s to a very small town in a southern state. And we were very, very different from everyone. And there were some preconceived notions about who we were and our level of work ethic. And at a very young age, my father set me aside and said, there's going to be things that people think about you because where we're from and how we live. And you are going to need to work harder than anyone else in your classroom, in your work. Sometimes it won't open doors. Sometimes you're going to see others that are going to succeed you, even though you know you worked harder. But you have to remember that you can never do anything that will fulfill what people expect of you. They're going to expect less. You need to do more. Never give anyone an excuse to believe a preconceived notion of who you are. And so learning that at a very young age instilled this hustle like you would not believe. And sometimes it's exhausting, but I keep those words that my father gave me and everything that my parents sacrificed, very close of mine. And I work in the service of them and the sacrifices of all of my family today.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to talk about my layoff, but
yeah, I'd like to do the layoff. Tell the story of the layoff. So some of you in the room here might have been laid off, and money's tight right now with COVID and all that, and it can be really challenging. But back in 2008, during the last recession, this is what happened to Barbara. So tell that story.
Absolutely. So I, along with many in the marketing and advertising world, had our careers rocked and laid off. I was laid off the week of Christmas in 2008, along with many individuals. And I knew at that point that it was going to be really hard to get a job. Back then, hiring was non-existent because there wasn't the business. And also we were entering into the holiday season. So, it was just a difficult time overall. I would say that even though I had a strong network and I had really, strong family ties, I was the first one to go through it. And I felt completely alone. It was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. And so what I did was I set up a series of interventions for myself because I didn't want to slide into a place where I wasn't sure what my purpose was, and I needed to keep that hustle inside of me and give myself purpose. And so I went about and I reached out to many people in my network, and I offered my services, my marketing expertise for free, because I needed purpose. I needed a story that I can tell recruiters of how I was continuing to evolve and move forward in my career. And I needed activity in my life. And so I was able to support, if we can think about back in 2008, there was, just a lot of change. I was able to support several small businesses. I was able to, at that point, really dive into social media. And I was helping actually a dog walking service that I used to use that I could no longer afford. So I said, hey, I really admire your brand. I'd love to figure out a way that I can support you because I really want to explore this. I had a good relationship with the owners, and like everything was a step, everything was a story to continue my momentum. So I had case studies, I had things that I could tell, and just going back to that need for purpose, that was something that was really important to me.
So what Barbara didn't say is during that time of networking, somebody from the networking world said, oh, let's have lunch. Barbara didn't have any money. And she ended up going to lunch graciously, and she ordered water during that lunch because it's just all she could do. So this is just some of, this is very real for many of us. This is a financially difficult time for many people. The other thing about Barbara was she has a very strong feeling of mentorship and helping others. And this really highlights one of the principles of activating your own feedback squad. But this is something that she's actually paying it forward. So she's one of the people that's actually available to help mentor people. But activating the feedback squad means that you can learn from dead people. You can learn from quotes that really inspire you. You can crowdsource feedback on your Facebook groups, on your special mastermind groups. You can join an accountability group. You can have a one-on-one relationship mentorship. You can take an assessment. You can take a strengths finder and find out what your strengths are. You can hire a coach or create your own advisory board. And the one thing that Barbara told me about her, she did have one mentor in college that really looked out for her and gave her a lot of tough love and helped her, again, reinforce that whole idea. She talked a little bit about that storytelling that she used. Every job she had, she built a story around the previous job so that she could hop to the next one. So Barbara's a very strong storyteller here. So Barbara, if you can just talk a little bit about your mentorship, it's a bit of a mission for you.
It is, and thank you for sharing that story. It was my college mentor who was very instrumental in giving me the confidence that I needed, and in many ways, validating that I was heading in the right direction. And so I want to take that gift that she gave me and continue passing that along. And I think there's a misnomer with sometimes with mentorship where it's like you have to be 100% committed and find this one person that's going to help you. And mentorship can, as Marty, as you showed in your slide, it can come to life in so many ways. And so what I try to do in coffee meetings, virtual meetings, social distancing walks, I do those too, is really take that opportunity to be an ear, provide some guidance, provide a contact. I am a formal mentor for two individuals and soon to be a third, because I know the value of really having someone to how to answer those questions that you might have and create that, trust and bond, especially when it comes to life and work. And these days, those two things are just so melded together. And I would say that every single conversation that I've had when I've offered my, we'll call it life and career journey to someone, I've gotten so much more in return. And it's truly, something that I want to continue doing. And for those of you who are participating in this webinar, I opened my LinkedIn and my email to you to feel free to reach out.
Yes, and the one thing that Barbara mentioned was we all have this perfect vision of a mentor that's 10 to 15 years older than us, that knows everything and has all the connections. And you got to be shaking your head like, well, I've never had that. That's not like when I ask that question in a crowded room and I say, how many have had this kind of mentor? About 20% say that they have, or that they've even had a formal mentoring program, and 80% of you say that you've never had anything remotely like that. So that's the way that it is, but it is accessible to us in a variety of different formats. So we are going to move on to the next thing. So just that what we're going to summarize here, there's two principles. One is, the activate the feedback squad, and the other one is viewing your career as a series of projects. And we have one more. So I'm going to introduce the next one, and then Devon Snowden is waiting in the wings to be the next case study. So if anybody has a question for Barbara, if you could type it in the question box, that would be great. We may have a few minutes at the end to answer some of these. And if anybody has a burning question right now before I move on to the next piece, feel free to type anything in that question box, because we can stop anytime. So one of the next principles is A/B testing your career. I did a presentation at Purdue University last fall, and there was a student, a freshman, that came up to me afterwards and said, I had no idea that I could test out different things. I felt a lot of pressure to stay with aeronautical engineering because that's what Purdue is known for. And I didn't want to test out bioengineering because I had always wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And she's a few weeks in, she's a couple months in, and she understands now that you can test and you can do something else. She came up to me a week later and said, because of this presentation, I now have 2 different internships in other areas of engineering. So this is a very important thing. So how do A/B tests work? You can do them like an equation, like in statistics, or you can do them in sequence. You can look back at 2 jobs previous and say, I like that job better than this job, so I'm gonna navigate towards aspects of that job. Or you can pursue a freelance gig on the side in the gig economy and be testing another career or a job on the side. And it's not really A/B testing, it's A through Z. And you can determine for yourself, is this a good fit or is this a bad fit? So that's how it works. I'm going to introduce you to Devon Snowden. In the discussion I had with him, he said, I'm really loyal. He had been with one role for quite a while. I'll let him tell you about it shortly. And he's not a job hopper. And so loyalty is really important in the workplace. But he said, honestly, sometimes I stay too long. But one of his strengths is he breaks down problems, he understands how things work, and he can fix what went wrong. And this is a guy that went from having an undergrad marketing degree to working in accounting and finance. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So his career path, and again, I don't put this because he didn't go right into a marketing job he had a different career hypothesis during his education. He went to work for a big bank as a financial analyst, and he was working with internal clients from all over the world, London, Tokyo, and in Chicago and New York. And he did a lot of really interesting stuff that I found fascinating. A lot of his analysis determined whether a derivative could be valued a certain way. And so if a trader couldn't trade if his valuation wasn't done correctly. So what Devon did is he worked with all of the automated data, and as the human being, he had to go through it and correct it. So that's a job for humans, but he had done this for quite a bit of time. And he went back to school, he got an MBA. And what he's doing right now is he is pursuing something called fraud. He got a CFE, so for consumer fraud, and he got a certified fraud examiner certificate most recently. And I'll let you chat with him in a moment. One of the things he said is he didn't want to have the Monday blues on a Sunday night. So that's the A/B testing of your career. So he's in the middle of a pretty big A/B test right now. I'm going to go back to that. So Devon, if you can chat with me and tell me how you went from marketing to finance. Like how did that work? If you can make yourself visible.
Yeah. I went to a junior college my first 2 years of undergrad. And when I was filling out the application for the 4-year school, you actually had to choose the major. And so my junior college, my only experience was in accounting. So I wasn't exposed to marketing or to finance either that my peers did in the 4-year school. So I chose marketing because to me, it was the mix between the creative as well as the analytical. So I just chose it on a whim. And once I got to the 4-year school, I found out that it wasn't really for me. So I needed to find something else, essentially, like for my first role outside of school.
Okay, that sounds great. And then tell us about, a lot of people that are listening to this are in the middle of thinking about a career switch, and you did a pretty dramatic career switch, and you shared with me how you did this, of stepping back a little bit. And could you walk us through some of the mindset that you needed to go through to really get away from what you were doing, because you knew there were jobs that were exactly the same that you could get? Right. So tell us what you did, meditation, or what did you do?
Sure. So in my prior role, I was based out of Chicago, and they were moving 4 cities to another part of the country. So I knew that this change was coming, and I had interviewed internally for another role, which was similar to what I was doing. And during that interview process, I realized that I had a very visceral reaction, was that I didn't want to do this. And I got to the later rounds of the interviewing, and they basically said to me, like, we just want to hear that you want to be here. And I couldn't pretend to do that. And like, it was something that in the past that I would have done. Like, I would just have gone with the flow because like it would be safer that way. So I realized that, I wouldn't be happy here. So I left my job. It took me about a month of just, I would say, like just really being by myself. I would go for walks, I'll go for bike rides, and just spend a lot of time and just like reflect on what did I enjoy the most throughout my career in the past, and how did I want to apply that in the future. And that's where I came up with, I really enjoyed doing the research, as well as the investigations in my prior roles. And I wanted to apply those to an industry that had a real impact in helping other people. I didn't want to necessarily be a part of a large corporation anymore where my work was being lost in the shuffle. So I really wanted to see the results of my work being applied, and wanted to help. I wanted to help individuals, or more broadly, the economy as a whole.
So what would be interesting to people listening is, how you discovered the CFE. This is a certificate that I had never heard of, a certified fraud examiner. And when Devon talks about wanting to help people, he wants to work with government agencies that get to a broad swath of people and really make great impact. And it prevents and uncovers crime in the fraud detection arena. And with his analytical skills and his new certificate, which you just completed, right? You did 4 levels.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I did was I was looking at jobs that had descriptions that looked interesting to me, and then so many of them had the CFE listed as a nice to have. So I looked into the CFE and realized that I qualified to take it, and I took it over a course of 6 weeks. I studied and I took all 4 parts of the exam, and I also created a word cloud out of about 10 different job descriptions in which words were the most prominent, and did I have the skills that applied to those jobs. And I found that a lot of the prominent words were not really like the technical skills. It was things like curious, like a willingness to learn, research, things that really resonated with me. And that's where like the light bulb kind of went off in my head that this was a path that I wanted to be going down, because this, for the first time in a long time, I was excited about a new career path. And I've had interviews in the past 6 months where I was actually excited about interviewing there, like not only for the role, but also for the firm or the government agency. So it was a culmination of all those things where I had never been really excited in the past about my interviews. Like there was always some part of it which kind of turned me off, but I went forward with it anyway. So this is a much more fulfilling path, and it just feels much more natural to me.
Right. So just to summarize, so Devon went through a lot of things. He had to step back, and he talked about bike rides and walks, but he has 2 young children at home too. So this is a busy man as well, a family person that has a lot of other responsibilities. But he forced himself to take a step back so that he could reflect on what am I good at and what do I really want to do. One of the things that I almost dropped when he told me, he was used to dealing with 100 or 1,000,000 line items on Excel. And I didn't know this, but after 1,000,000 line items in Excel, it stops working. That's the max. So he had to learn all of these other programs to manage the data in his past role. So here's a guy that has a really strong analytical competency, and like, how do I do this and feel like I'm making a difference in this world. And when you think about TechReady has the cybersecurity degree. This is really, or cybersecurity emphasis. This is a really important thing, because the way that our networks are structured right now, it's highly dangerous for data to be floating out there. So I thought that was very interesting. So Devon, it really illustrates the A/B testing, and he wasn't A/B testing every step of the way. He's doing this now during the pandemic. So I thought a lot of you might relate to that. You may have been at a role for a long time, or you might switch every few years. So you can give yourself permission, even if you've had a role for a long time, to move on. So I am gonna move on. I wanna move on to just this one thing to let people know that are attending here today. Anyone who attends, Karen's gonna send links tomorrow or after this is over to a 28-page white paper and also a career agility guide. So that's just all free for you. It's bonus resources that you can get. You can also get them if you type in martikonstant.com/resources. And there's also an event discount for the book, Activate Your Agile Career. So to summarize, we have 4 agility moves here: adapt or get left behind, your career is a series of projects, activate the feedback squad, and A/B test your career. The bonus move is really responding to change. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the curve, the change curve it can be a free flowing roller coaster ride that's really scary on the downdraft, because you're just really frustrated, like we are at this pandemic near the top, and we're not wanting to adapt fully to all of this, the changes that we have to do. And at some point, the idea is to get to acceptance where that star is at. So that's the respond to change, and that's that figure 8 that's on the side where you're responding to industry changes and personal changes. And here we go. All right. So what I say to that is, when change is happening, don't do nothing. Always react to it, figure it out, make an assessment, and then take action and make your move. There's a couple questions coming in, and I wanted to start with the one that Jeff said to Barbara. Do you interview your mentors before engaging in that kind of relationship? So Barbara, if you could answer that one. And we have one for you too, Devon, after that.
Sure. So, I noted a little bit in my response. It's usually just a series of conversations and professional relationship building, whether it's someone who I'm looking to bring on as a mentor for myself, or someone who is evaluating me and I'm evaluating them as part of like my serving as their mentor. I will say I currently do not have a formal mentor that's someone who's helping guide me in my career, although I do, going back to the feedback squad, someone whose opinion I, treasure very deeply, is Marti. And I have other individuals in my network that we don't have these formalized, like, very serious mentor-mentee relationships, but there's these moments where we come together and we're able to help each other. And, going back to agility, I think sometimes you have to be agile in how you get support and how you give that support back. So it's definitely, it's about building relationships and finding what works for you and finding what works for the other person.
And adding to that, I think what you were describing is situational mentorship. When you have, maybe you have a technology issue and you're just really behind in something, you reach out to somebody who's really smart about it, and that would be a form of mentorship to you to get up to speed in something that you're lacking in skills. Or you might have a strategy issue or a job navigation issue that someone in your network that they're not your best friend, but that you trust their guidance or their comments, short of that. So the next question I want to get to what are the prerequisites for a CFE exam? This one is for Devon.
Hi, yeah, thanks. So really the only formal requirement is that you have a bachelor's degree. It can be in any field. And I think on the website, they also list that you have to be of high moral character. But in order to get certified, you need to have 2 years within the industry. So that can be an audit. It can be anything like a forensic accounting or examiner. So on their website, they have a list of examples of things. But really, if you just want to sit for the exam, you just need to have a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions? If we don't have any other questions, I have a couple questions for Devon and Barbara. And really the question, maybe Devon, since you're up, is like, how did you know that it was time to make a change? You described your thing, like, what was it? Like, what was the tipping point that it's like, okay, this is it. I need to make a change. What was it?
Sure. To me, I think it was a confluence of things. I wasn't totally happy, like in your chart for step 2, you have this curve, right? Like you reach the mastery and then you become disengaged. So I was on the downhill part of that chart. I wasn't really engaged, and I wasn't really happy with how, I guess, with how my skills and passions are being applied. So to me, it was like, do I keep doing the same thing, which I had in the interview I had internally before I left, which my gut just said no. And then also at the same time was, like I need to apply my passions to other things and to other industries. And that's what really kind of pushed me into this new path.
Thanks, Devon. And before we get back to Barbara, one of the questions from Nicholas was, did you study for the CFE on the side of your core job? And this is a common thing. I talked about parallel pursuits being one of the principles. A lot of people do things on the side in the only time that they have. So the question is, did you do it on the side or did you do it full time?
I did it full time, but it is absolutely something that I would have done in parallel if I was still working full time, because I love the content. Like, I just absorbed it, and I would have made time for it if I was still working full time.
Okay, and then I want to ask Barbara, when did you know? Now, Barbara has gone, she started in retail sales, built up stories, worked in marketing, built up this competence in digital marketing, and works in the customer success. And now she just got accepted to Johns Hopkins University to study organizational leadership. Talk to us about, what goes on in your head when you figure, okay, I've done this, I need to do something else.
Sure, great question. And I will say that my career has been a series of steps and journeys, and really looking at how I can pivot, right? So, going back to retail, I needed to have a job in high school to be able to, help my parents and how to take care of the things that every teenager wants. And so I was able to take that job, and as Marty, as you mentioned earlier, like through storytelling, telling what I was able to do, telling my impact, I was able to get a better job, a more high paying job, a job in college where they gave me a car so I could help them. Everything was like one step leading to the next step. And really all of those things culminated into what I was doing, some event marketing in college. I was able to parlay that into a full-time job after college. And then, back to age myself in 2006, there was this thing called digital that was being talked about. And so I was thinking ahead, it's like, how can I continue to grow my value as an employee, keep myself entertained, moving forward? I'm that momentum, that hustle is always inside of me. And so I pivoted to digital. I saw social media as a place where I could dive in, and I went into that. And then my current role, my full-time job, is a director of customer success at a digital agency. So all these things have been working together. Now you think about, where does organizational change come with that, and organizational leadership? I'm doing that in addition to my full-time job, because what I'm seeing right now is this seismic change that we're all undergoing in our professional lives, in our personal lives. And there's not a lot of tool sets there. These are the frameworks that we need to understand about the psychology of how you incorporate change within an organization, how you set up processes for success. And I see this, and I can still bring that to life through my digital career, but now I have another skill set, and I can continue to evolve and be that valuable employee, elevate my earning potential, which is, important for all of us. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, it's what's next? How can I grow? How can I evolve? The one thing that I do want to come back to, something that you said, is don't not do anything. I know that's bad grammar. Please, it can be overwhelming. I have been there many times, and there's a lot of free classes. There's a lot of places where you can get inspiration. There's a lot of events, and all you have to do is take that one step. Give yourself grace, because you're going to need to. There's a tremendous pressure that we're all facing, but the best investment that you can ever make is in yourself. And I believe so strongly in that. And again, I encourage any of you in this session, please reach out to me. I have a list of blogs I read that are free. I have a list of classes you can take. There's the resources with TechReady Illinois. There's so much great access out there that all you need to do is just take that one step. And once you get there, it's like, what's next? I can do this. So I really encourage all of you to really think about that, and even 1 hour investing in yourself and doing something new and learning something new will pay dividends for years.
And notice how Barbara mentioned, oh, digital was a big thing in 2006. I needed to understand that social was coming on deck then. And so she hopped on a trend and pursued her career at that point that was different than it was before. Right now, let's take a look. Where are the winners and losers going to be during the pandemic? We're still during. We're going to be during for a long time. I was listening to a financial show this morning, and it said that, you know, all these high flyers like Amazon that are doing really well right now, delivery services and all that, when we get a vaccine, they're actually going to see a steeper drop in revenue, and there might not be as much in their area. And I think I mentioned the area of cybersecurity. That's never going to go out of fashion. I have a website of my own, and I can't even tell you, I have 2 layers of security on top of it. I can't even tell you how many times I can see who's hacking from all over the world. I'm a security geek. I used to work in the mobile security business. So it's very interesting to me to watch that. So cybersecurity is just a huge thing. And anything to do with AI, take anything you're doing, event planning, anything, add the words AI to it and figure out how will AI make event planning different than it is now? How will AI make HR different than it is right now? How will it make cloud computing different than it is right now? And those are areas to explore. So going to where the jobs and the opportunities are. And on that note, I am going to, we just have like 1 more minute that, you know, Karen was going to summarize for you what's next with some of these webinars. I wanted to pass it off to her so she at least has a minute or so to summarize that. So thank you so much for your participation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, you'll get the freebies tomorrow, and feel free to connect. I connect with just about everybody who reaches out.
Thank you,
Karen.
Marty. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Marty, Devon, and Barbara for this extremely informative session. I hope everyone online has learned many things that you can apply to your job searches and how to manage your brands and your careers, thinking of your career as a series of projects, using your feedback squad, A/B testing, so many good nuggets from today's presentation. As a reminder, you can find the link to Marty's book on Amazon. It's called Activate Your Agile Career. And if you use the link that will be included in the post-webinar email, you'll have a discounted access to the book. There'll also be the video of today's webinar along with other resource links that Marty is providing. So expect to see that in the next couple days. We'll also include invitations to next week's webinar where we'll be hosting the University of Chicago's Ashish Pujari to talk about their upcoming program, which is called Data and Analytics for Business Professionals. That program starts on August 17th, and the registration deadline for that program, not the webinar, but their program, is August 10th. You can learn more about TechReady on our website and join us on the 29th. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.